Hi, welcome to my channel. Let's talk about eager loading. We're going to take a step-by-step approach applying different eager loading techniques to this fictitious ticketing system that I've created. Let's dig right in. So here's the database structure that we're working with. I've seeded 1,000 users, 10,000 tickets, and 100,000 comments. And so we've got the users who have tickets. So if you notice, there's an author ID and there's a user ID. The user ID is the person that the ticket is for, and the author ID is the person who created the ticket. And then we've got comments. Those comments are related to tickets with the ticket ID. And then they also have an author ID, and that's the person who wrote the comment. So let's take a look at the UI that I've built. This UI has been scaffolded using Tailwind UI. And what I've gone ahead and I've done is I'm just showing 10 tickets here. And these 10 tickets are, you know, not really using that many resources, but there's quite a few queries going on in the background. So before we take a look at exactly the queries that are running and how many queries are running, let's take a step back and talk about what eager loading is. Eager loading is where we load our relationships up front and then seed or hydrate the relationships. So if we've got a ticket and then we've got an author, well, that ticket has a relationship to that author. And if we're grabbing the name, well, we need to first grab the ticket and then we need to grab the user and then we need to grab the name. And so what this does, what eager loading will do is it will grab the tickets and then it'll grab the authors related to that ticket, but it'll grab any of the authors in a single query. So let's take a look at this blade template so we can kind of see the relationships that are being used here. So we can see on this table, this is just a standard Tailwind table, and we've got our table headers here. And then we've got this loop here for the tickets. Now we're grabbing the ticket ID, which is no problem because the ID is directly in the ticket, likewise for the title and the status. But notice on the ticket here, the ticket has a relationship called author, and then we're getting the name. The ticket also has a relationship called user, and we're getting the name for that. We also have a relationship for comments, and we also are getting the first comment, and then the author, and then the name of that author. So if we open up the ticket model, these are the relationships on the ticket model. These are standard just Laravel relationships. But because we're using the Laravel relationships, we can start to talk about how we might use eager loading to load some of this data up front instead of having to make a query for each one of these. Because essentially what happens is when we load this ticket doesn't have this author relationship loaded into memory. And so it has to run a query to load this author, the same thing for this user, and then the same thing for the comments. Because we're not doing that up front. Now that's where the eager loading comes in. So let's take a look at the queries that are running. So I'm using something called the Laravel debug bar, and the Laravel debug bar is super awesome. It's a composer package that you can install into Laravel that gives you a bunch of useful information. So one of the things that we can do with this is we can view all of the queries that were ran. This taps into an event in Laravel that is just keeping track of these. So in here, we can tell that 42 statements were executed, 30 of which were duplicated, and 12 were unique. Now, this 30 duplicated, basically what that's telling us is that we have every time one of these, and notice we only have 10 records. So we know for each of these records, we're running at least three queries. Yeah, we're running 3 queries. So this can be optimized quite a bit, but to prove a point, I want to show what it looks like if I were to load all of the tickets. Now remember, I seeded 1,000 tickets, so let's load all of the tickets. So I'm going to create a new route, a new function for the route, and it's going to be index 1. I'm going to take this code and just put it here. We're going to do an all here. We're going to grab all the tickets. We've got 1,000 tickets. And then I need to create a new route. We're going to take this and create a new route. It's just going to be dashboard 1. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to load this page. This page is going to take a really long time and a lot of resources. So I'm going to speed it up, but I want to prove a point and show how many queries are running, how many models are being hydrated, how long, how much memory something like this is going to take if you're not eager loading your models. The other thing that I want to outline is that you would probably paginate this data. So you'd maybe only show 100 or so at a time. But imagine if 100 users, 1,000 users are using your app, there's going to be quite a bit of unnecessary queries and resources that are being used. So that, we want to make sure that we're doing this. And there's actually a way we're going to talk about at the end where you can actually force yourself for the eager loading. Now this is still loading. You saw the page refresh, but this is still trying to process all of that stuff in the background. Okay, so now that the page has finally loaded, I actually had to limit the number of tickets to 1,000. Otherwise, the page just simply wouldn't load. There was just too much stuff on the page. So I was trying to initially load 10,000, but I'm actually only going to display 1,000. But I think the point will still be important. If we take a look at the number of queries that are being ran, we're talking about 4,000 queries to display this page. We're talking about almost 3.5 seconds to, again, display this page. If we look at kind of the type of queries that are running and the ones that are duplicated, we actually have 3,000 queries that are duplicate. 1,000 of those are unique, so 1,000 of those are going to be probably the just getting the tickets and whatnot, but all these green ones we can see are the duplicate queries. And you can see that, each of these queries only takes microseconds, but each of those microseconds add up because they're going one right after another, after another, after another. So let's incrementally make this much better so that when you've got 100 users, 1,000 users, etc., you're using a lot less resources on your server and the pages are a lot more speedy. So we're going to make we're just going to make different indexes for these and just kind of so we can see the progression. I'm going to name this 2. And this time what I'm going to do is I am going to specify we can specify a width. And we can say with author. Now this is just the name of the relationship on this particular model. So again, if we click into this model, we can see that there's an author relationship there. Let's go into web. Let's go back into, let's go back into Chrome and then let's load that route. So we're going to load number 2. Now this is going to take a little bit too. It should slowly but surely get slightly quicker. Now there's still lots of records that are being pulled here, so that's why we're having to wait a little bit. So we can see that now we've reduced the queries by 1,000 just by eager loading that one relationship on the ticket. Now again, the relationship that we just eager loaded was author, And if we go back into the blade, that author is being used here. Now this author kind of seems like no big deal when you include it in your blade file, but really it is a big deal when you're talking about having to make all those extra queries just to get the name. So that's why we're doing the eager loading, because now if we look at Chrome, Chrome is pulling all these users based on these IDs, based on the tickets that were pulled in. So what's happening is the tickets are loading, it's pulling the users based on the tickets, and then it's actually adding those users, well, those authors. It's actually putting those authors into memory on each of those ticket models. So that way, when you call arrow author, it's already loaded on the ticket. It's not making an additional query. It's already in memory on the ticket model. Okay, so now that we've done the author, and we can see it went from almost 3.5 seconds to 2.7 seconds. I think we can add another relationship to this, because remember we've got the author, we've got the user account, and then we've got the comments, and we've got the first commenter name. So these are three separate relationships here: author, user, and comments. Let's go ahead and add the user for another eager load. And let's take a look at Chrome again. And let's take a look at number 3 now. All right, we're getting a little bit better. We're at 1.9 seconds with 2,000 queries. We started at 4,000 queries, then we went down to 3,000, and now we're at 2,000. And the nice thing about the Laravel debug bar is actually it'll tell you, where this query is coming from, and we can tell this query is coming from the dashboard controller, line 41. So just a little extra tidbit there. But again, let's take this to the next level. Let's eager load the comments now. So we should see that the queries drop even lower than the 2000. And let's do comments and see what we get with comments. Let's go to the fourth route. All right, we're getting better. So we've noticed that we're at 1.16 seconds, and each time, one thing that I forgot to mention was that the memory usage was actually dropping as well. All right, so now we're at 1,005 queries. Started at 4,000, now that we're at 1,000. And again, we're seeing all these select where in, and now we've got an additional one for comments. This comments one is because, again, we're eager loading. This little red bar you see here is the time that it took to run the query. We can see microseconds here for these, but this one's kind of a bigger one. So this one took 22.79 milliseconds. If you're working with big sets of data, you probably aren't going to display this much on the screen, and or you might not be doing a select star. The select star can be kind of expensive. Now, if you're doing some processing in the background, you might be able to be a little bit more loose with the queries and the things that you're making. But, chances are if you're chunking in the background, let's say you've got a database full of, 100,000 tickets and you need to do something to all of those tickets. Well, you might chunk them at 500 a piece, and you might eager load them with the 500 and then go through the records that way. All right, let's see if we can make this a little bit better, because let's take a look at the blade template again. So we're eager loading author, we're eager loading user, we're eager loading the comments. Now we're eager loading the comments on this one, but then notice we're actually grabbing another relationship based off of the first comment from the ticket. So let's take a look at the comment model. The comment model also has a relationship called author. It's the person who wrote the comment. Let's see if we can further reduce the query count. Laravel has a really cool thing where you can actually do, you can nest your eager loading. So what the next thing we can do is comments.author. So if we're doing comments.author, it's going to eager load comments, and then it's going to eager load the authors on those comments. All right, and let's go to number 5. And we can see that that page loaded almost instantly. That page took a half a second with less than 30 megs of memory. And now we're at a whopping 6 queries. Now you can see the power of the eager loading, and I was just trying to prove a point with loading this many records, but we went from over 4,000 queries to only 6 now. That is a really big difference, and if we're talking again about having a fairly large app, this will add up when you've got users hitting your database. So we can see that 2 of them were duplicated and 4 were unique. I wanted to prove the point in how much we can reduce the queries with the eager loading. Now I want to take this a step further. So we've kind of gone down some basic ways of eager loading. One thing that I wanted to kind of throw in there that you can do with eager loading is you can control the query that is being run for the eager loading. So if I only wanted to eager load and display comments from authors that start with an A. So again, remember we're doing tickets, comments, and then we're grabbing the first comment and then the author's name. So if we only wanted to grab authors that started with an A that have comments, we can do that. The special way we can eager load something is by adding a function as the value for that particular relationship. So if we add query here, this is going to make it so that when we're querying for the author, we're only getting the stuff that starts with an A. All right, so the first thing you'll notice is that the first commenter name is blank. And that's to be expected because we said that we only want to grab authors on the comments that start with an A. So let's scroll down this list and see if we can find somebody that starts with an A, just to make sure that this is working. Ah, here it is. So we know that this is working because we've only got stuff with an A. If I take this out, or if we go back to number 5, we can see that this starts with a W. If I change this to a W, we have to go to number 6. The W shows up, but notice there's nothing here. And as we keep scrolling, we only notice only a few have items filled in. All right, let's talk about one last way that we can do some eager loading. And it's actually will have the same result. We won't be able to reduce the queries down anymore. However, I did want to outline a different way that if you already have a model, So let's say, or you've already got, yeah, you've already got your collection of models. What you can do is we're going to take this and we're going to create a tickets variable. We're going to grab the width and we're going to get rid of that. So we have the tickets. Now, just because we have the tickets doesn't mean that those relationships are going to be called. The only reason those relationships are called is from the dashboard here because we're accessing, the special relationship methods that Laravel has. So another way we can eager load if we already have a collection or if we already have a model, another way we can do it is if we have tickets, we can call load. And that load is going to take the same string that was in the width. It's going to take the same array that was in width, and it's going to give us the same result. So essentially what we're doing is we've gotten the tickets, but then we want to eager load these relationships. And since tickets is assigned to this variable, these relationships are going to be hydrated. And then let's pass the tickets with the eager loaded relationships down onto the blade. And we should see no difference here. There's no difference. 6 queries here, less than a half a second, 28 megs of RAM. And this is pretty good. Again, one of the things I just wanted to outline, you probably wouldn't want to display this much data. And if we look at how many models, this little thing here tells you how many models are being hydrated, how are being instantiated. Again, that's probably way too many. You're using too much resources on your server. You might want to load, let's say 100. But this stuff adds up as you start adding more users to your platform. The last thing that I'll leave with is if you actually wanted to prevent yourself from using these things and not doing eager loading, so basically you're forcing yourself to eager load, there's what you can do is in your app service provider, there is on the model class, you can say prevent lazy loading when the app is not production, because this will actually throw an exception if you don't do this, then if you don't eager load, it'll throw an exception in production, and that just wouldn't be good. Your app would be broken. So let's actually get this to throw an error. So we're gonna get it to throw an error by going back to the controller, and let's create another one of these. And this time we're just going to get 500 tickets. It doesn't really matter. We're not going to do any eager loading at all because that's the point. Laravel is going to force us to do the eager loading by throwing that exception. If we go to 8, Laravel is going to complain that we've attempted to lazy load author on the model ticket, but lazy loading is disabled. And it's actually showing us the line that's causing this. Ticket arrow author. So that's how if you wanted to prevent yourself from falling into, using these unnecessary database calls, you can force yourself to eager load everything if you turn on that setting. Again, that was in the app service provider. Inside the boot method, there's a function called prevent lazy loading on the model class. Thank you for watching my video. Feel free to drop a comment below on how you've used eager loading in the past or how you plan on using it in the future. I'd love to hear about it. And if you found this video useful, if you could help my channel out by subscribing and hit the notification bell so that way when I release new videos, you'll get notified about them.